He got caught sleeping in class by his teacher. Instead of blowing up at him right away, the teacher offered him a deal. Answer a few questions correctly, and he could go back to sleep. The questions were actually pretty easy, but Kyle couldn't answer a single one. Faced with such an unmotivated student, the American teacher began patiently trying to get through to him. But before he could even finish what he was saying, Kyle suddenly lost it and started throwing punches and kicks at him. Because he'd assaulted a teacher, Kyle was quickly brought before juvenile court. According to the regulations, he should have spent a year in juvenile detention. But the judge ended up giving him just 3 months, and he only had to serve it under house arrest. The reason for the lenient sentence was that Kyle actually had an understandable reason for snapping. It had happened just a few days earlier. Kyle and his dad had gone fishing together, and they'd had a great haul. They were both in high spirits. On the drive home, Kyle was behind the wheel, sharing all the fun moments of the day with his mom over the phone. The whole family was happy. But because his attention was divided, he accidentally got into a car accident. When Kyle managed to crawl out of the wreck, he discovered that his father had died. This tragedy weighed heavily on him, and he just couldn't let it go. It sent him into a deep depression. The reason he'd lashed out in class was because the teacher had mentioned his father. The teacher hadn't meant any harm by it, but it had touched Kyle's rawest nerve and made him snap instantly. As a result, he had to face the consequences of his actions. 3 months of house arrest. To make sure he didn't sneak off, the police fitted an ankle monitor on him. If he went more than 30 meters from the house, the green light would turn red. If he didn't get back within range in 10 seconds, the device would immediately alert the authorities. The monitor was waterproof and tamper-proof too. The only way to get rid of it was to wait out the full 3 months. While that might sound like a long time, it wasn't too bad for Kyle. He spent his days sleeping and playing video games, basically treating his sentence like a vacation. But his good times came to an abrupt end just a few days later thanks to his mom. She cut the internet cable, canceled the TV service, and told Kyle to clean every room in the house. Kyle had been spoiled his whole life. He'd never had to lift a finger. There was no way he was going to do all that dirty, exhausting housework. He just brushed off his mom's demands with some half-hearted excuses. But without the internet and TV to keep him entertained, Kyle's days became unbearably boring. The ankle monitor only made him more frustrated. With nothing to do, his only option was to stare out the window to pass the time. One day, he noticed a new family moving in next door. It was nothing special, really, but Kyle watched with unusual interest, because they had a daughter. She had long blonde hair and a slender figure. He couldn't make out her face from where he was, but he was already captivated. Suddenly, the doorbell snapped him out of his daydream. He opened the door and saw what looked like a fire right on his doorstep, so he instinctively started stomping on it. After a couple of stomps, though, something felt off. It was just a burning paper bag with something inside it.
Oh, shit.
It turned out to be 2 neighborhood kids. They knew Kyle was stuck at home, so they'd come over to mess with him. Not only that, but they also stood there hurling insults at him, which made him absolutely furious. When the 2 kids took off running, Kyle chased after them without thinking. But just 3 minutes into the chase, his ankle monitors started beeping. That's when Kyle realized he'd gone out of bounds. He immediately turned around and sprinted back home. When the light finally turned green again, he let out a sigh of relief. What he didn't expect, though, was how sensitive the device was. Shortly after he got back, a police car pulled up in front of his house. Even though Kyle kept explaining what had happened, the officers followed protocol and took him in anyway. And of course, all the neighbors saw the whole thing. Luckily, since it was his first violation, the police just gave him a warning and didn't pursue it further. Right at that moment, the girl who had just moved in next door came outside to see what all the commotion was about. This time, Kyle finally got a clear look at her face. Her delicate features paired with her slender figure made her absolutely stunning. Unfortunately, Kyle was being escorted by police at the time, so he looked pretty pathetic. To avoid anything like that happening again, Kyle came up with a plan. He walked slowly from his front door toward the boundary until the device turned red. That spot marked the edge of his allowed range. He then walked around the house, mapping out his entire perimeter. As long as he stayed inside that line, the alarm wouldn't go off. Without video games or TV, Kyle gradually discovered that the world outside his window was actually pretty interesting. To his left, a father and son were playing in their yard. To his right, a kid was having fun by himself. Not far off, a lively little dog was running around. But of course, what interested Kyle the most was the girl who had just moved in. When he saw her drive home, he rushed back to his room to keep watching. This time, he got an unexpected bonus. As the girl slowly took off her jacket, Kyle's heart started racing. The next day, Kyle started scheming. He timed when the girl usually got home and deliberately reached for his mailbox, pretending he couldn't quite get to it. When the girl walked by, he faked losing his balance and fell to the ground with an exaggerated yelp, hoping to get her attention. Sure enough, it worked. The girl saw him and ran over to help, pulling the mail out of the box for him. Kyle seized the opportunity and casually introduced himself, but the girl seemed used to guys hitting on her like this. She didn't respond right away, just turned and walked off. That night, Kyle planned to sneak another peek at the girl across the way, but instead, he spotted something strange. Another neighbor seemed to only come and go at night, and his BMW had a noticeable scratch on it, exactly matching the detail Kyle had seen in a news report earlier that day. Several girls had gone missing in town recently. According to the police, The suspect's vehicle had a distinctive scratch mark on it. This particular neighbor rarely showed his face and always came and went without a trace. Very mysterious. Kyle couldn't help but wonder, could this guy be the serial killer? Kyle told his friend about what he'd discovered, and the two of them immediately went into detective mode, searching for information about the cases online. But the research was really just a cover. What they actually wanted to do was spy on the girl next door. Whenever she was swimming in her pool, they got so excited they couldn't look away from her gorgeous figure. Uh-oh, this time they might get caught. Just as they were nervously discussing what to do, the doorbell rang. They opened the door and found the girl standing right there. They immediately thought they were in deep trouble. She must be here to confront them. But aside from feeling awkward, they also felt a strange sense of excitement. After composing themselves, Kyle opened the door wider. To their surprise, the girl didn't seem angry at all. She still had that familiar smile on her face. When she heard they were playing video games, she actually seemed interested. Before Kyle could even invite her in, she walked right into the house. But once she got upstairs, her eyes landed on Kyle's telescope, the very evidence they'd been using to spy on her. Thinking fast, the two made up a story on the spot. They told her they were secretly monitoring a serial killer, their neighbor, who was probably responsible for all the recent disappearances. It was just a quick excuse to cover their tracks, but the girl actually believed them. She even joined in, helping them keep an eye on the mysterious neighbor. This caught them off guard, but since they'd already committed to the lie, they had to keep up the act. Kyle's friend quickly got his hands on a bunch of second-hand equipment. Phones, cameras, a projector. It all looked pretty legit. If they spotted anything suspicious, they could immediately snap photos or record video as evidence. They got right to it. The three of them set up a camera by the window and waited patiently for the mysterious neighbor to show up. Kyle's attention kept wandering, though. He couldn't stop stealing glances at the girl beside him. He had no idea if the neighbor was actually a killer, but he definitely knew the girl was beautiful. The girl had noticed Kyle's little crush, of course. She was mostly just going along with it because she thought it was fun. While they were chatting, a pair of headlights suddenly lit up. The mysterious neighbor was finally home. The two guys snapped to attention as they watched him bring a woman inside. Based on how they were acting together, she was probably a nightclub worker. Was the neighbor really going to hurt her? They stared tensely at the camera screen, hoping to catch some evidence. Sure enough, when the woman wasn't looking, the neighbor grabbed a knife. But after all that buildup, nothing happened. He just used the knife to cut a number tag off the woman's dress. Turns out it was all a misunderstanding. This guy probably wasn't a murderer after all. Even though they didn't capture any useful evidence, Kyle was happy enough just spending the whole night with the girl he liked. After she left, he glanced over at the neighbor's house like he always did, and suddenly noticed something completely different. The woman looked panicked, like she was trying to escape. Kyle grabbed the camera to get a closer look. He could clearly see her trying to call for help. Just then, the neighbor appeared from behind and dragged her back inside. Kyle was about to capture the whole thing on camera when he realized the flash was still on. He peeked outside again, and saw the neighbor staring straight at him. Right then, his friend called. Kyle frantically told him everything he'd just seen, convinced now that the mysterious neighbor was the killer. But the problem was, the guy had clearly spotted him watching. Kyle was suddenly on edge, unsure of what might happen next. But just as Kyle was freaking out, something even stranger happened. The woman from before came back outside and got into her car, leaving the neighbor's house completely unharmed. Kyle was totally confused now. Had he really just imagined the whole thing? The next morning, Kyle was a nervous wreck. He couldn't make sense of what had happened the night before. The neighbor seemed incredibly suspicious, but at the same time, he hadn't actually done anything wrong. Just as Kyle was about to head out, something unexpected happened. That very neighbor showed up inside his house.
Just take it easy.